All right, everybody, welcome back to the Identity Jedi show. You guys know what it is. Another episode. We're coming at you. We've been having just a nice run of guests and creating content. I'm so excited. It's been really cool to do this. I love recording. I love hanging out with people and talking about some good stuff. Let's get a real quick check-in. Samir, how are you doing, sir? You are not in your normal kids' room, like with the nice, colorful toys behind you. It's just throwing me off here, man. You're muted. And look at that. You start the podcast on mute.
That's a podcast. Guess the words coming out of my mouth. No, seriously, it actually feels strange to be in a WeWork office and doing a podcast. But hopefully, the noises in the background won't disturb us. I'm excited to be here. I think, David, you nailed it. This week has been back-to-back meetings and podcasts, and the diversity has been amazing. So it's awesome. I'm doing great. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. It's been a busy week. I've had a good couple of days worth of meetings and putting some things together. Not quite ready to make some announcements yet, but I got some stuff brewing and it's exciting, man. I think the biggest thing I love about working in this industry, really just let me back up. It's more macro than that. Like working in an industry and doing something that you just literally love to do, right? It gets you excited every day. You wake up and you're like, oh man, I get to work on this today. And this week has really been an epitome of that. I've been able to really kind of do some things I've been wanting to do for a long time, kind of coming together. And it's just been exciting. And then I've talked to you a little bit about this. I've been, dibbling and dabbling in coding like the last month or so and doing stuff like that. So I've been kind of like updating my little app that I have, pushing out, product deployments and things like that. So I'm going to get space, man. I'm happy. I really am. It's exciting.
Well, I think the fact that you're doing things in the industry you like, but also what you like doing in the industry, right? And it seems like you like doing a lot of things because you just mentioned you're going to start, you're doing some coding. And I think that's important to also find that happy space in the industry, what I like doing, having the freedom to tinker. I'm happy for you, man. This is good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, coding that's my background, man. That's where it all started. That's where it all started, man. That's how I got into this whole thing was just coding and messing around as a kid. And then, went to school for comp sci, and that's what led me into identity, right? I thought I was going to be a Java developer and I landed on a project and, 20 years later, I'm doing identity access management. Anyway, enough about me. We told that story. Let's get to our guest because this week we've got a special guest coming on. We've got a topic that I think a lot of people are going to find interesting, right? Because this topic that we're going to be diving into, some of the themes that we've talking about, like what does it mean for identity? How do you really change an organization? And what does it take when you're planning and rolling this out? But we're going to talk about a project that's selected that a lot of us have been looking at and saying, hey, this looks hopeful. And now we get a little bit of firsthand experience on what that's about. So there's your little teaser. Before we do all that and get into it, let's introduce our guest. Mohan, welcome to the Identity Jedi Show. Appreciate you for coming on. Give us a little bit of intro about yourself, what you do, and then we'll get to the rest of the pod.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Samir. Nice talking to you guys. I have heard a lot of great things, David, about you and the Identity Jedi. Mohan Gajula. I'm based out of the Chicagoland area. I work for a company called Duck Creek Technologies. I'm a senior director and also the head of identity and access management and all of enterprise information technology that involves all enterprise systems, applications, their integrations to financial, marketing, and other platforms, operations of our global facilities, infrastructure, and network services and security as well.
You got everything.
I have been with Duck Creek for under 2 years now.
All right. Nice. Yeah, that's a lot of responsibilities, but I like to hear that set of responsibilities, especially as we look at identity and how we've talked about this all year, this combination of identity and security and how they've got to get closer. When you start to look at the inner, what does that mean? We've talked about it from product and all this stuff. A lot of this stuff starts to get bogged down in what I would call the administration of it. Like who's owning it? How is it set up organizationally, right? It's got to be moved out of IT. It's got to have all that. So the fact that you have those responsibilities, that means that you can drive and connect those teams, which I think is really cool. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more organizations set up that way, where you get identity leaders that have these responsibilities, some of a little bit of security. So we start to see some of those things, and we can get that good progress that we've been looking for. Quick question. How did you I love asking people this. Give me a 45-second intro. Like, how did you get into identity? Because like nobody wakes up one day and goes, I want to be.
I heard you say you started as a Java developer. That was my journey too, like long time ago. When I immigrated to US, I used to work for a partner company for computer associates. That's how I got into some of the security product implementation landscape,
Mm, hmm
from access control, audit, and security command center, to name a few products and technologies. That interested me in learning more, continue to learn more. And that's how I grew my career as a identity professional. And I continue to love and learn, continue to learn every day about identity, what we can do and deliver for organizations that I work.
Awesome, man. That's it. The journey, and I've said this a couple of shows. I'm biased because my journey was from dev to implementer to product manager. But I think having that hands-on knowledge really helps when you need to
Absolutely.
run it, direct it, or go build products or go lead strategy, because you have a feel for what it means to do this every day. And I love to see more practitioners now turning into leaders. Who better to deliver and bring the word of identity to the business than somebody who was like, listen, I used to do this. Like, I know exactly what our people are going through every day. Hey, business, I know why you're struggling to do this. It's because this is what's happening on the identity side. You're struggling
Absolutely.
to manage this access because we have a very inefficient provisioning process. So it takes
Yeah.
us 3 or 4 or 5 days to figure out what to create access to. And that's why you can't respond in time. And we're even seeing on the product side, a lot of founders who are ex-practitioners now making products, which I think is going to be the best we've had. We're going to start seeing new things coming in. I'm really excited about that. I love hearing about your backgrounds. I want to get to our main topic and we'll go from there. Recently, you guys have been going through a selection of different products and things to implement. As we've been looking into this industry, right? And we've been seeing this consolidation. We've been seeing different companies start to build their platforms, right? So we're seeing SSO companies becoming IGA companies becoming PAM companies, and everybody's trying to consolidate and offer one platform. One of the ones that kind of sticked out, and I've called them like they are the ones that launched what I call the platform wars, and it was Okta, right? This is now going like I think 3 years ago when Okta announced they were going to do IGA and PAM, and it literally threw the entire industry in a tizzy, right? Yes, folks, tizzy. It's a technical term, trust me. And because people were just like, what's going on, right? You mean the SSO companies are going to do IGA and PAM? And that just kind of kicked off where we are today. As we've been looking to see how they were going to do that, there's been some stops, some starts, things like that. And so I can tell you, as both an analyst and somebody who researches the industry, I've been very interested to hear from people who have looked at that journey and said, okay, yes, we're going full bore with Okta's IGA or Okta's PAM product. So recently you guys have had a rollout that you're going for. Walk me through that process of what you guys looked at and said, okay, this is what we want to go to. We know where we want to go. Here's a tool we're going to select. What went into that decision-making process? What kind of conversations did you have business-wise that says, hey, we're going to go with this because we think this is the best solution for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, when I joined Dockery, I took some time to assess the current state and understand where we want to be, both from a enterprise standpoint, like the corporate identities, and also from our customer identity journey standpoint. Once we solidified on that strategy, like the current state assessment, where we want to be 3 years from now, the strategy and the roadmap, I was supported by my leader, the CISO of the organization, and the rest of our executive leadership team with the resources and the funding required. And the first stop was hiring a IAM engineer, and then we were immediately able to understand the current state assessment that I performed alongside partnering with a number of other folks, some of the IAM practices in the company at that point of time, like a year and a half ago. We narrowed down on 5 use cases for our IGA: integration with Workday, automation of provisioning, deprovisioning of access, automation of full-time employee, the contractor lifecycle management, periodic access reviews. So when I did the initial assessment, we were still a public company. We were recently acquired by a private equity firm. Those were the 5 use cases that we narrowed down. And my team, consisting of folks from IAM engineering, end user support / service desk, who does majority of our internal IAM processes today, plus my end user experience engineering lead, they collaborated, understanding the current processes, the use cases that we narrowed down, the 5, and then went through the industry leading and a mix of industry leading and startups, you name it, about 12 to 14 tools that would meet all of our requirements. We went through a rigorous proof of concept or proof of value.
Right.
The team ranked according to what product and the technology meets our use cases. And then when it came to decision making, we narrowed it down to 3 technologies before choosing Okta for our IGA. And then the next element was understanding the licensing model, the overall cost, the cost of ownership, and then last but not the least, return on investment. I have seen number of IGA implementations spanning multiple years, and then even at the end of 2 years, 3 years, you're not done, right? It's a
Right.
journey. We have to continuously evaluate your use cases, your environment. Those were the factors that helped us identify and finalize to move forward with Okta. We only finished phase 1 of the implementation. So we automated our lifecycle management. We have also automated the birthright access of the day 0 access provisioning. Everything is automated now. That provides a lot of time savings for the team. We are going to continue that journey into phase 2 and tackle other aspects of that IGA journey.
Awesome. I just want to recap real quick for our listeners. I hit on this a lot when I talk to clients. I love the process you went through. So number 1, the first thing you did when you got there, an assessment, right? But like a real assessment. So you got it and said, okay, what do we do today? Where are we at? Where do we need help? What's okay? What's not okay? You have to dig in and do that. And I love the word you use partners, like other IAM engineers and people within the organization. I tell customers that all the time. So many people just want to hire XYZ company. They'll come in and do an assessment. That's okay. But the bulk of the work you need to do, right? Because you know that organization, you're in that organization every day. And an outside company will come in and help, and they may help to get some of that data up in front, but you go in and figure out, assess, what do we have? What do I need to do? Right. And then number 2, once from that, you said, okay, based on that, what are our use cases and what we need to solve? And I think if anything else, that's the most critical thing. Whenever I've been a vendor, I've been a founder, I get it. But I tell customers, you have to go into any kind of dealing with a vendor and telling them what you want. Do not let the vendor drive you to their use cases and what you think, well, this is how you should do this and this is whatever. And I get it if you feel like if you're listening to this, like, well, I don't really know identity and this, that, or whatever, that's fine. The vendors can give you some of that, but you got to remember it's always the biased view. They're going to give you a view based on where they want to take you. That doesn't make them evil. That just makes them doing their job. And it's easier for both sides if you have clear sets. These are the use cases. This is what we need done, right? Based on our assessment, we need to do this. We need Workday integration. We need automation for life. Like, those are the things you want. So now you know what to ask for. And you go to the vendor, say, show me this. Now that you've done that, you bring in all your vendors and go, okay, show me. And now you can actually compare and contrast. And that's exactly what you guys did. And go, okay, we know what we wanted. Here's our use cases. Who do we think did it better? I'm like, that's how you make a choice. I think it's so interesting. Sometimes in business, we forget about the normal things we do in life. If I asked you to go pick out what you wanted to eat today, you're going to look at options. You're going to go, I want pizza, I want a burger, I want a salad. You're going to lay everything out and make those. It's the same thing, but you have to know what it is that you're looking for so you can compare. I love that. I just wanted to highlight and point some of that out so people can get that. If they're going through this, that's the process you need to go through. So before I hog all the questions, Samir, do you want to jump in with some questions?
No, I'm with you. I wanted to jump in first with some perspective about me and Mohan. Me and Mohan go back more than 10 years. We worked together the Fanny Freddies, the cousins, the two cousins in the DC area, Fanny Freddy. And then we've stayed in touch since. I distinctly remember Mohan, and this is more of an observation, and maybe with your help, we'll make it into a question, which is a lot of times the CISOs at large companies, mid-sized companies, they look at identity a certain way and they turn to an identity leader like yourself. And this is what I want because it enables a business or it drives security and they have a perspective, right? And do you feel like you being in the middle of the CISO, the heads of certain departments in security slash IT, and on the flip side, you have the vendor that's throwing out a bunch of buzzwords and talking about what competitors are doing. You have to kind of bring people down to earth and say, you need some building blocks. You need to first have a cohesive infrastructure for us to work with, or you can't expect this to be done in 6 months, even though the vendor's promising the world because they want to win the deal and they want to potentially have their partner, Accenture, Deloitte, whoever, also kind of be part of that multi-million-dollar engagement. How have you been successful there? What have you had to do? It'll be good to get your perspective on how you keep people grounded as you engage on a new initiative like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm fortunate to have my current leader and the CISO slash CIO is someone great to work with. And they rely on each of us, right? Whether it is IAM leader, data security, cybersecurity operations leader, as the subject matter experts and let us enable us to drive our initiatives and considers us as the subject matter expertise to drive the strategy. You own it, you drive it, you execute it, right? Going back to my previous roles where I led IAM programs, it was also, I think you need to showcase, you need to prove that you are the subject matter expert. What you're saying makes sense and enables the business, and also bring the business leaders on your side. Hey, these are some of the things that we need to tackle. Your partner in enabling that, right? Whether it is authentication, authorization, what are the pain points? Every single role that I had, I didn't go ask for, I need multi-million budget to execute on it. I have been nimble. That's I learned over the course of my 20-year career so far. I ask what is needed and what is the must, depending on where the organization is, where the business wants to go, right? From that standpoint, and show the value and return on investment. Your leaders and the entire leadership team will support you in that journey and continue to invest in the program. I hope that helps answer your question.
That's a great response. And maybe I need to get you some whiskey and then we'll talk about the Freddy days when we didn't have many options. Remember, Mohan, there were only 2 or 3 companies that did IGA. There was only one. Well, for the most part, we had to stick to Microsoft back then. I don't even think Okta was in the market. With some of the telemetry we needed for the SecOps team, I don't think we did the connective tissue between the identity function and SecOps.
Same identity.
I think the world has changed since then. Back then, we didn't have as many options. I get you. At the end of the day, it's the support, it's the alignment, it's the trust. These things haven't changed. Completely agree with you, right? Tell me something, and this is a little controversial question, right? Tell me what a mistake you made. I'm not interviewing you for a job.
Yeah.
I want the audience to learn from some mistakes you've made as you've grown as an identity leader.
Yeah. So I tell this to my team repeatedly whenever I'm talking to them, which is learn from your mistakes and never repeat them again. You go back to several years ago where I was the leader for IAM and my security engineering leader or my partner, who is also with one of the Fortune 100 companies right now in the cybersecurity engineering space. We both were implementing one of the IGA solutions and we blew away entire directory infrastructure, meaning all our identities. I'm talking about close to 1,200, just because the way error message showed up and the way we read it and interpreted it. It was as simple as, do you agree that there is a correlation error between the identity? Do you want the system to disable all of these identities? We read it as a few uncorrelated identities like the terminated users. Incorrect interpretation, and we blew away the entire directory. There were two options, either getting fired or second thing is, hey, go fix the problem, own it, fix the problem.
Right.
So the leader that we used to work for, the head of information security, asked us, do you have a handle on it? We said, absolutely. How long do you need? We said 30 minutes or less. He gave his office to me and my partner. We were able to fix it in 15 minutes. Every individual or the identity that had issues, right? Logging in, they were able to, within a few minutes, they were back online. Thank God it was lunchtime in the East Coast. So we didn't have that problem for everybody. But I think that was a very pivotal moment. Don't be afraid of making a mistake, but at the same time, learn from it. Do not repeat it and keep growing, keep learning.
That was the longest 15 minutes of your life, huh?
Absolutely.
We've all been there. In fact, me and my buddy Matt Topper say this all the time. I feel like you can't call yourself an IAM professional like until you've deleted or disabled like half an organization or an entire organization. Like until you've done that, like you really haven't. Yeah, you may know identity, but you really haven't learned like the you don't have that battle scar. I think all of us run into it and have them. It goes to show how much identity is tied into the core of how business operates and has been for so long. We've said this so many times. It's just always been this thing that we've just, oh, it's IT administrations, this is getting accounts, stuff like that or whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, sure. But like when you don't have those accounts, you just think about how we grew up as an industry, right? And this is why, unfortunately, a lot of people think AD is, oh, I've got identity access management, I've got AD, whatever, right? But like Active Directory became the central point for how you logged into anything. If you screw up your Active Directory, nobody's logging in. That means you're not getting to your business application. That means you're not getting to your email. That means you're like, all these things kind of reflect. And so it's so funny now to look back at it. If I look at the past 20 years that I've been in this industry, to think how we consider identity now, it's such a high level thing. We talk about it so much. The fact that we didn't always think of it this way. It's like, how do we look at this and go, wait a minute. So the one thing that we use to make sure everybody can log in and access applications, we give the least amount of funding and don't care about. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a whole lot of sense, right? I find it interesting. I'm writing the newsletter today and I was researching different things and I stumbled across posts on LinkedIn talking about business value justification and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I hate that word justify, right? Because justify to me means like when you were a kid, you had to justify why you want to go out with your friends. Like tell your friends, this is why I want to go to the park. This is why I want to do these things, right? We should be past the point where it's like, we've got to go ask the business for money. And here's all the reasons why we need this money because it's really, really important. And while, yes, I get that's a part of business and to an extent, that's what we do. If you look at the real definition of justify, it has this bad sentiment. We should have moved to this point where identity is like, no, we're having conversations about what are we investing in to increase the efficiency of our business? How are we doing this to make our business better? If the sales team wants to go to Fiji for the sales club, they don't have to justify the selection going to Fiji, right? It's just like, oh, this is the investment we're making into our sales team for a sales club, right? So it's one of those things that I'd like to see us moving more towards that as we talk about this, because we are starting to really see and understand how much identity really plays a part into, business. And I think the next step for us is honing in on telling that story of how it drives revenue.
Access is now granted to Identity Jedi University. Online self-paced classes to take your IAM skills to the next level. Get started today. Let's get you back to the pod.
I really feel like over the next couple of years, as we get better at taking all this telemetry and looking at all this data and showing how access is connected to applications and activities, I really do think we're going to start getting to the point where we can actually show dollar for dollar value. Doing this investment in securing this identity allows us to create much more revenue in the company, right? And that day I can't wait for. Hopefully I will be retired and out of this industry and doing something else by then. Man, probably not. Who knows? I want to talk about your phase one, right? And we don't need to get the details of the implementation, but just kind of what was that process, right? Because one of the things you talked about, which is a big key factor for a lot of people right now, is IGA projects. They have a reputation that they take years, right? Multiple years, multiple projects, and hundreds of thousands, not millions of dollars. You normally don't see that. You do a lot of projects that don't get a lot done, right? They get
Right.
that foundational phase, and then 2 years later, they're still there, right? I know that was one of the things going into it that you were very aware of. Going through this first phase, what was that like? And compared to like what that was like versus like, the expectation that you wanted, right? Like you did not
Yeah.
want a multi-year phase. You wanted something smoother, faster.
Sure.
Walk us through what that implementation was like for phase one.
Yeah, absolutely. So once we picked the product we wanted to implement, the second thing was I didn't had a unlimited budget or unlimited timelines. What we did was for the 5 use cases, we wrote a statement of work, distributed it to multiple players in the identity space, implementation partners, and requested responses. In the meantime, I was also able to hire a engineer that had prior experience with Okta. So a subject matter expert certified with the administrator and developer certifications. And then we were able to also find one partner that was able to come in, meet within our budget threshold, and agree on the scope of work, statement of work, and cost also within the allocated budget that I had. And more importantly, within the timelines that I was looking for. They have been a great partner to us here. They were able to effectively communicate where we are, what the challenges are, what the blockers are. And then to your point early on, having the entire information technology or the enterprise IT function within my organization was super helpful in driving to completion. A lot of organizations where we find challenging is between the security, IAM, and the IT teams, the friction, right? They don't want to give IAM team access to or anybody to touch the directory, the change hours, right? I didn't have those challenges, and it became organically easy implementation. And then last but not least, there were few things we were unable to do, which were outside of our control. Whether it is an ask from our HR operations team about writing something back to our HR system, while staying within the budget, we repurposed or reprioritized the scope, and we were able to go back and deliver that for our partner team, right? Like the HR operations team. That was a win-win because there was a manual process element involved, and that's prone to errors. And overall, I stayed within budget. In fact, we saved a few thousands of dollars overall. And I'm looking forward to the phase 2. And after we purchased the product to the phase 1 implementation, it took us less than 4 months. It was a clear line of statement, scope of work, alignment from everybody within the organization and your partner that helped, and prioritizing it, very important.
Yeah. And that is the goal. I really do want that to be the norm. Like what you just went through to be more the norm. We should get returns from some of these companies. And when you start to do more of the platform games, you
Yeah.
should get some returns, right? Because you can do everything in one system. You don't have to worry about cross training as much, right? Everything's kind of there. That was the whole promise of SaaS. And as these identity companies have grown up in this SaaS world, we're getting the 3rd, 4th generation of these SaaS companies, right? We kind of know how to do it. Some of this stuff should just come native, right? It's out of the
Yeah.
box. You don't have to configure it. But what really helps is knowing what you want, right? Knowing very clear, what is it that we want to do? This is what we want to get out of it, right? We want to be
Absolutely.
able to automate X, Y, and Z and does this at the end. Because to your, and this is like the perfect teaching example, right? Because what happens, right? As you start going through the phase, something comes up and you have to change and adjust and be agile. If you got unclear or open-ended requirements and open-ended scopes of works, and then there's change to it, That's how a 4-month project turns into a 12-month project, right? That's how your
Yep.
$300,000 budget goes to a $1.2 million budget. And you're just like, oops, sorry, mom, I overcharged credit card.
Yep. Absolutely.
I have a question for you from the perspective of identity founder or a vendor. Let me just put the vendor term there, right? What are some things, now that you've had these exposures to there's various processes that identity touches within an enterprise, what's unsolved? What's still a pain point? What should vendors, startups, big vendors be working on now to make a customer like you happy and successful?
I think the main component is how easy it is to manage once you select a product or a vendor, how easy it is to implement. You have implementation partners, you may have trained them. The IGA or IAM platform, the technology, the tools are implemented. Oftentimes, we run into situations where administrating it, maintaining it becomes a nightmare. What I have seen with some of the latest, including the company you founded, is the ease of use, the navigation for the administrator. And also, in some cases, when you are dependent on the managers, people reviewing access, certifying access, or administrators, what will their day to day look like, right? I have seen oftentimes implementations that when we have to upgrade, if there is a lot of customization allowed, there may be a company that might choose to customize a whole lot of their IAM processes. If there is limited amount of customization allowed by the product itself, hey, these are the things that I'm very good at. I can come in, solve your problem. I think that helps. Every customer or company might have different requirements and use cases. Maybe finding a common ground across certain industries and setting that as a framework out of the box rather than having to customize, and that becomes a nightmare for companies to manage, maintain. 2 years, 3 years from now, they want to pivot and change to somebody else or some other product.
Makes
Is
sense.
something I believe would go a long way for companies getting into or foraying into IAM space.
That's fair feedback. I think you're calling out something where the total cost of ownership, the level of effort to get up and running and get value, to show the value to the business, right? I think
Yeah.
David kind of honed in on quantifying the benefits from we're helping customers transact more on your platform through IAM, and therefore we're bringing in X amount of dollars in revenue. I think both go hand in hand. That's great feedback.
So, what would you say to, let's say there's a young manager, right? They're
Yeah.
7, 8 years experience, somewhere around there. And they've just been handed the reins. Guess what? Identity is all yours. Knock yourself out. You've been a great manager. You've done so much here. We want to give you this. What's some of the advice that you would give them as they're getting started? They kind of know a little bit about identity, right? They haven't been raised in it. They're just like, great. I've heard it. I know what it is. What's one of the good pieces of advice you would give them as they get started?
Absolutely. So embrace the opportunity first. Understand the current state or the landscape. Assess the current inventory of system identities, where they are managed, and get to know your team who, or maybe cross-functional team who probably is doing a lot of identity relevant tasks across the organization, however they are structured. And also work with your leadership, work with your team to put together, understand where they want to see the program go and let you lead. And then align with like what you need in terms of resourcing, tooling if necessary, and last but not least, if there is any budget required, right? Get the support you need. I think those will definitely help them be successful, in my opinion.
All right. It's good advice. And listen, we need more of those leaders coming in. So if you are listening and you've been going through your internal job board, this is head of identity position. Do it. We need it. We need more people coming into this industry. I'm getting excited about it and bringing some new blood. I really don't like that saying, but I can't think of another one. I've been watching too many vampire movies lately. That's probably why I don't like it. As we start to wrap up, quick question. Are you going to Gartner this December?
No, I'm not.
Oh, man. That would have been a perfect time. I would have chipped in on the whiskey and we could have sat around and talked. I want to hear about the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac days. So I think that's going to be.
I'm going to Identiverse next year.
Okay.
More useful and a lot of identity professionals, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we'll definitely put on the books to grab some dinner and catch up at Identiverse. I will definitely be there. Matter of fact, I think it's time for me to send my yearly ping to Mr. Andy Hindle.
Yeah.
Talk to him about what's going on next year at Identiverse. They started doing regional conferences now. I think they're virtual though. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. CRA is squeezing all the juice out of that Identiverse lemon, buddy. They're making sure they're getting the return on their investment over there. But I'm excited about Identiverse next year. Did they change it? It's not in Vegas this year, is it? I gotta look at that.
San Francisco?
No, they moved.
Sorry.
Orlando.
Yeah.
And
It was announced during the conference.
I could do a lot of things. I'm gonna do it.
But you think the
Yeah,
Tesla's going to run out of juice on the way there? I get it.
Don't get me started. I'm really concerned about the battery degradation because I've lost a lot of miles off this thing. What am I on year 4? And I'm just like, and every time I email Tesla about it, they're like, no, that's about the standard rate. I'm like, if you say so. All right. That's it. I think that's the pod, man. Those are his questions I got. Samir, you got anything else?
No, this is great. Mohan, it's always good to talk to a practitioner that's been through the journey. And I just say to the listeners, find Mohan on LinkedIn. He's always got time to help, advise, support the community. He's just a wonderful human being. So it's so nice to have you on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Dave and Samir, for having me and talking to me. And to all those listeners, if you have any questions, feel free to ping me. And also, don't hesitate to continue to learn, continue to explore opportunities where it may be beyond your skills, right? Continue to learn, adapt. Good luck. Cheers.
All right. Awesome. That's a wrap for us. You guys know what it is. The Identity Jedi Show, streaming on all the podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I was going to say Google Podcasts, but they got rid of that. And now it's like YouTube Music. I don't know. Wherever you find a podcast, you will find us there. The Identity Jedi Show. Make sure to like, rate, subscribe, comment. All of it goes a super long way, and we appreciate the support. Also, check out the Identity Jedi newsletter at theidentitygedi.com. Comes out every 2 weeks, Wednesday, 7 p.m. into your inbox, except for this month. If you're listening to this in October, it's Cybersecurity Month. You get one every single Wednesday. In fact, I'm getting ready to log off, write the newsletter for tonight. Be good to each other, kind to each other, love each other. We'll see you on the next show.
Bye.